2023 Board of Douglas County Commissioners 5:30 business meeting. We want to welcome those of you who are here at the old courthouse and those who are joining us online. Some of you may be here to provide public comment. The Board of Douglas County Commissioners welcomes public comment and in advance thanks you for following these procedures. Each action item on the agenda will offer an opportunity for relevant public comment about that topic. We ask that you wait until the agenda item you're here for comes up for discussion. Comments relating to agenda items are welcomed after the board has had the opportunity to discuss the topic. The Board of County Commissioners will invite comments on topics not included in the agenda during general public comment directly after considering the consent agenda. This is a time for addressing issues not on today's agenda, but related to the general business of the Douglas County Commission. We'll first call on folks who are here in person, and then we'll turn to any online commenters who are here with us tonight. If you're here on Zoom, please plan to use the raise your hand function when the time comes and listen for staff to call your name. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask everyone to give their full name and Douglas County residence for our meeting minutes. All public comments should be directed to the County Commission. Campaigning for office is not allowed. We also reserve the right to mute or remove any speaker who is vulgar, rude, or inappropriate. The public should also know that comments received by the Commission during our meetings do not represent the views of Douglas County government. If visual aids are used during the meeting, the presenter will share their screen. Please note that online participants will not be able to view them without a computer, smartphone, or tablet during tonight's meeting. Materials are published online for your reference as well. Lastly, a recording of this meeting will be available on our YouTube page and website. We're going to start tonight's meeting with a proclamation, and then we have 5 items on our consent agenda. We have regular agenda items around the support for a Midco band acceleration grant, 2 planning items, well, actually 3. 1 is a site plan for a well-controlled building. 1 is a rezoning. And the 3rd is a consideration of initiating a text amendment. Then we'll have appointments and commissioner and administrator miscellaneous before we adjourn. Commissioner Willie has agreed to read tonight's proclamation, so I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you. So tonight we have a proclamation for National Health Center Week of August 6th through the 12th. Whereas nearly 10,000 Douglas County, Kansas residents are uninsured, disproportionately impacting residents based on their race and ethnicity, place, age, and income level. Whereas federal qualified community health centers like Heartland Community Health Center have provided high quality, affordable, comprehensive primary and preventative health care in our nation's medically underserved communities, delivering value to and having a significant impact on America's healthcare system. As the county's largest primary healthcare network, community health centers are the healthcare home for over 10 million Americans in over 14,000 communities across the nation. 1 in every 11 people in the United States gets their care at a community health center, including 20,394 area residents served by Heartland Community Health Center last year. Whereas community health centers are a critical element of the health system, serving rural, suburban, and urban populations, and often providing the only accessible and dependable source of primary care in their communities. Whereas every day, community health centers develop new approaches to integrating a wide range of services beyond primary care, including oral health, behavioral health, and pharmacy services, to meet the needs and challenges of their communities. Health centers have more than doubled their behavioral health workforce in the last decade to meet Americans' growing need for behavioral health services. Last year, Heartland provided behavioral health services to 4,498 patients. Whereas community health centers are governed by patient majority boards, ensuring that patients are engaged in their own health care decisions. Whereas community health centers nationally support more than 500,000 direct and indirect jobs, including physicians, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, licensed family therapists, and certified nurse midwives who work as part of multidisciplinary clinical teams designed to treat the whole patient. Heartland Community Health Center employs 165 individuals each year. Whereas the community health center model continues to prove an effective means of overcoming barriers to healthcare access, including geography, income, and insurance status, improving health outcomes, and reducing healthcare system costs. Whereas community health centers reduce overall costs of care by managing patients' chronic conditions, which keeps them out of expensive healthcare settings like hospital emergency rooms. Whereas community health centers are on the front lines of emerging healthcare crisis, providing access to care for our nation's veterans, addressing the opioid epidemic, and responding to public health threats in the wake of natural disasters. Whereas National Healthcare Week offers the opportunity to celebrate America's more than 1,400 community health center organizations with over 14,000 service delivery sites, including over 3,000 schools. We honor their dedicated staff, board members, patients, and all those responsible for their continued success and growth since the first healthcare centers opened their doors more than 50 years ago. Whereas during National Health Center Week, we celebrate the legacy of America's community health centers and their vital role in shaping the past, present, and future of our community's healthcare system. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Douglas County, Kansas, do hereby proclaim August 6th through 12th, 2023 as National Health Center Week and encourage all Douglas County residents to take part in this week by supporting their local health center and celebrating the important partnership between community health centers and the communities they serve. Adopted this 9th day of August, 2023.
Thank you, Commissioner Willie. I see Elizabeth Keever and Julie Branson here. If either one of you would like to come up and say a few words. Got to press that button. There you go.
Okay, great. Commissioners, thank you so much for recognizing August 6th through the 11th as National Health Center Week. Today, I have the honor of standing before you to emphasize the significance of celebrating National Health Center Week. This annual event provides us with a unique opportunity to recognize and appreciate the vital role that federally qualified health centers like Heartland play in our community. First and foremost, health centers are pillars of primary care and wellness across the country and in our neighborhoods. Heartland and health centers like us offer a wide range of essential services from preventive care and chronic disease management to dental and mental health services. We are the frontline providers reaching out to the most vulnerable and underserved populations, ensuring that everyone has access to quality health care, regardless of their background, insurance status, or ability to pay. We are also the provider of choice, providing quality dental, primary, and behavioral health care. 1 in every 11 people in the United States gets their care at a community health center, including 20,394 area residents served by Heartland last year. National Health Center Week is not just about acknowledging the organization, it's also about appreciating the dedicated healthcare professionals who work tirelessly to improve our community's well-being. From the doctors, dentists, therapists, pharmacists, and nurses to administrative staff and board of directors, these 165 employees demonstrate unwavering commitment to care in Lawrence and the surrounding area. Their efforts deserve recognition and gratitude as they go above and beyond to make a difference in the lives of people. Heartland acts as a crucial bridge to care in our community. We promote health education and preventive measures that address social determinants of health while developing new approaches to integrating a wide range of services beyond primary care, including oral health, behavioral health, psychiatry, and pharmacy to meet the needs and challenges of our community. For example, across the country, health centers like Heartland have more than doubled their behavioral health workforce in the last decade to meet Americans' growing need for behavioral health services. And last year, Heartland provided behavioral health services to 4,498 patients. Heartland builds lifelong relationships with health starting from day one. In fact, last year, Heartland provided care to 13,101 children under the age of 18 years old. 3,620 of those patients were 4 years old or younger. And just today, Heartland was awarded an early childhood development grant from the Bureau of Primary Health Care. This grant will allow Heartland to bolster its efforts in developmental evaluations for children age 0 to 5 and facilitate timely follow-up services by bridging the gap between underserved populations and essential healthcare services. This opportunity will also allow us to ensure seamless care coordination, patient-centered support, and linkage to vital community resources. When faced with emergencies, natural disasters, or most recently the pandemic, we have become essential in providing healthcare services, testing, and support to affected communities. We are seeing this now as our community faces the growing challenge of substance use disorder. Last year, Heartland provided medication-assisted therapy treatment to 504 patients. 232 of which were diagnosed with an opioid use disorder. In conclusion, National Health Center Week serves as a reminder of the indispensable role that health centers play in our lives and in the community. We are beacons of hope, centers of compassion, and welcome all who need care in our community. By celebrating this week, we not only express our gratitude to the tireless and dedicated staff, but also recommit ourselves to the idea that quality healthcare is a fundamental right for all. Thank you for joining us to support, honor, and celebrate these champions of health and wellness in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And Commissioner Willie has a copy of your proclamation. Elizabeth, did you need a better picture than that? Okay. So Julie, if you want to come up front here, we have the pose we do.
Proclamation pose.
The proclamation pose. That's what you're looking for. Thank you. All right. Thank you both for being here. Let's move on to consent agenda. Commissioners, do either of you have any item you'd like to pull off the consent agenda for further discussion?
No, just to make a note that item 2.4 is strictly to authorize the contract. The dollar amount has already been approved by the County Commission.
Okay, is there any member of the public who'd like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Anyone online, Jill? Okay, commissioners, I take a motion.
It's Commissioner Reed, move to approve consent agenda items 2.1 through 2.5.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 3-0. We'll move on to general public comment. Is there anyone here who'd like to provide general public comment on any item not on today's agenda? Anyone online, Jill? Okay, we'll close public comment and move to our first regular agenda item, which is support for a Midco broadband acceleration grant in the amount of $10,000.
Commissioners, a lot of the information that's relevant to this matter is included in the cover memo. This looks a lot like a request, a couple of requests that have come to you before, one previously that has come from Midco. I know that we have in the panel, we have Justin Forty with Midco Government Relations, and I believe we have Jeff Stromberg here from Midco to answer any questions that you may have, and staff can answer questions the best we can as well.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions?
No, just that I'm pleased to see companies come forward and look to serve some of our rural areas. This one is north and northwest of Lawrence and east of Lecompton. So that's a great area that is highly unserved. So thank you for that.
My only question is that notes that the application window closed on August 7th. And so has the application already been submitted and you're allowed to submit letters of, I guess, have we already submitted a letter of support? And now the ask is just for the allocation of 10,000. Is that correct, Jill? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for helping me walk that through.
And the allocation is contingent on the grant getting
The
approved
approved, right,
later
the
this year.
award. Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Okay, we'll open it up as a regular agenda item. Any member of the public like to speak on this item? Anyone online? Okay, Commissioner Willie, you'd probably like to make a motion on this one, I'm guessing.
I would. Thank you. I move to approve authorizing one-time general fund reserves grant match in the amount of $10,000 from Midco contingent on award of broadband acceleration grant to the Kansas Office of Broadband Development.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further comment? Just thank you for bringing these to us and seeing if we can access some of this broadband acceleration grant money. With that, all those in favor say aye.
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 Pass 3-0. We are now moving on to our triad of planning items. And we'll start with a site plan SP 23-00213 for a well control building at the southwest corner of North 1900 and East 1600 Road. And I see our good friend Mary Miller up on the screen. Hi, Mary.
Hi, yeah, and I will be, I'm sharing my screen real quickly here. And as you mentioned, this is a site plan for a well-controlled building for rural water district number 13. It is proposed on about 100 acres. They have about 10,000 square feet leased for this site plan. But the overall parcel is 100 acres. It is directly adjacent to the east side of the City of Lawrence Municipal Airport. And generally, it's in the southwest corner of North 1900 and East 1600 Road. There is floodplain in the area. You can see to the west, there's the red floodway, and to the right, there's pink floodway fringe, but there's none on the subject property. The property is completely within the airspace overlay district. This is an overlay district that has certain limitations on building height and requirements for FAA approval. And the applicant provided information which showed that this building is exempt from the requirement to have FAA approval due to the small size. And Rural Water District has several improvements in this area. The graphic on the right shows the 2 existing wells. They're doing some district upgrades at this time. They intend to install a new well. The general location is shown in yellow. And they'll be doing some upgrades to the water treatment facility up to the northeast. But the only item that's a subject of this site plan or that needs site plan approval is the well-controlled building. And that's generally shown with the blue square. This shows the kind of the location of the new building. It will be accessed from a driveway from the west end of North 1900 Road. The right of way for 1900 Road ends here, and the rest of this is just a driveway or a field access. The graphic on the right shows the improvements would just be an access off of the driveway, and then there's small well-controlled building. They would have enough parking for 1 employee, 2 employees, and in the case that maintenance is needed, that would be infrequent. And it would have a well-controlled building, and on the north side of that is a backup generator. The building style, and it'll be very small, but it'll be peaked roof. It'll be very similar in appearance to other agricultural structures. As I mentioned, it'll have the building, and then to the north of it, there will be the backup generator. So with site plans, we have several criteria we look at. First, the use must be permitted, and this is in the Ag 1 zoning district, and minor utilities are permitted with site plan approval. The site arrangement must be compatible with nearby land uses. It's very small scale, very low traffic generator. They'll be using full cutoff building mounted lighting. They've noted there would be no sound from the motors. They're submersed and the building just would not let any sound escape. The only sound associated would be from the standby generator, and that's on the occasions that it would need to run. So it should be very compatible. And in addition, the nearby land uses right now are all agricultural or the airport. That have a safe and convenient ingress and egress. They're going to use that existing driveway or field access off of 1900 Road. No pedestrians are anticipated with this use, so pedestrian safety is not an issue. No landscaping is being proposed as it's interior to agricultural property, and there will be no outdoor trash areas. And so staff is recommending approval of the site plan, and I'm happy to answer questions if you have any, and the applicant is available. He's attending via Zoom if you have any questions for him.
Thank you, Mary. I don't have any questions. Commissioners, either one of you have questions? Nope. Open up to the public. Any member of the public like to provide public comment on this item? Anyone online?
Commissioners, I did just move the applicant over if you wanted to give them a moment.
I take that's Jake, or is that Lewis?
Lewis.
Lewis. if you'd like
Yes,
to
I'm
provide.
I'm the consulting engineer on the project for the water district, so I'm happy to address any questions, but Mary did a fabulous job outlining the proposed project.
Great. Thank you. Okay, we'll close public comment on this. I'm happy to make a motion here, commissioners, to approve a site plan SP. Oh,
Mr.
you have
Chair,
some more comments. Yes.
We haven't had public comment.
I think I did open up public comment. Did I? Yeah, I opened up public comment and then checked online.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got
Okay. Anybody, let's just do it again. Let's not hurt anybody. Everybody had a chance to comment publicly on the water well. Okay. I'm going to make a motion to approve a site plan SP 23-00213 for a well control building located at the southwest corner of the intersection North 1900 and East 1600 Road, east of the Lawrence Regional Airport, based on the findings listed in the staff report.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. The hits keep coming. We're back with Mary again, I believe. This is for a rezoning Z 23-00155 for 33.5 acres at 1577 North 1550 Road from general industrial and AG1 to AG2.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
this is not actually a matter of conflict, but I just wanted to make sure that it's known that I do serve on the board that employs the owner of the property that is under consideration. I don't have any connections with the property. I'm not paid anything to serve on that board. So there's not a conflict there. I just wanted that to be known, and it won't impact my ability to make a good decision.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Hey, I'm Mary Miller again, and as you mentioned, this is a rezoning from general industrial to and agricultural to transitional agriculture. The subject property is located just to the east of the city of Lawrence. It's adjacent to city limits on the southwest corner, and there's a very narrow strip on the left side that is within the city, and that's an access drive to the cemetery to the southwest. But the land immediately to the west is outside of the city limits. The graphic on the right shows its location within the tiers of the urban growth area, and it is within tier 3, which means it's not expected to annex until after 2040, which is the time frame of the comprehensive plan. There was a little confusion when we began this rezoning with the pre-application. We assumed there were 2 parcels, and that's how they were shown on our GIS maps. But once the application was submitted and we started reviewing it, we identified 6 separate parcels. 2 to the north were divided with the right-of-way for North 1550 Road. And then there was one that was divided with the dedication of the railroad right-of-way. And this, the parcel outlined in red had a little errant remnant piece over to the east. And then the 2 purple parcels. So the largest parcel of these 6 is 16.3 acres. And that's why the zoning district of Ag 2 was selected, since none of them have the required 20 acres. If the rezoning is approved, the 16.3 acre parcel that has the residence on it would be a conforming parcel. The remainder would not be, so none of the others could obtain a building permit unless they were consolidated with another property and became larger. But looking at the floodplain map to the right, building is really not an option unless there's fill brought in the floodplain, it's elevated out of the floodplain. And so that's not an issue. And the applicant indicated that he's rezoning in order to continue the agricultural use of the land. So the non-conforming status of these parcels would not have any impact on him. So with a review of rezoning applications, one of our principal criteria we look at is it compliant with the comprehensive plan? And these recommendations in the plan are those that we usually mention when we're seeking to rezone away from the agricultural district, that we protect high quality ag soils, contiguous amounts of agricultural land, minimize agricultural land conversion to non-agricultural uses. And this graphic shows the quality of soils that's present on this property. The one on the right shows it's nearly all prime farmland. And on the left, it shows that the majority of it is class 2 soils, and then there's class 1 as well. So this is very high quality agricultural land. And so it would definitely meet that recommendation in the comprehensive plan. The plan also recommends that we consider the goals and policy of the Food Policy Council. And so looking to the Food Policy Council goals, they're very similar to those in the comprehensive plan, but they have another policy that we establish tools to protect high quality agricultural land for farming that are economically feasible for the landowner. And so there had been an option. They could have surveyed all the land, combined it, and then gone with Ag 1. However, the amount of protection for the land really wouldn't have been more than the Ag 2. The uses are very similar, and it would have required quite a bit more financial investment for the applicant. And that's why Ag 2 is being requested. We look at, is the zoning compatible with nearby zoning and land uses? The area is zoned GI, general industrial, and this was put in place in 1966 with the adoption of zoning. And while we see the floodplain today and we think it's a very unsuitable zoning, there were no floodplain maps in place at the time, and this probably was a suitable place for industrial, given the location of the railroad. But today we wouldn't see this as appropriate industrial zoning. The land uses are shown on the graphic to the right. The black dots show the residences in the nearby area, and the primary land uses are limited residential, agricultural, and then there's woodland south of the railroad. So this rezoning would be very compatible, and the proposed agricultural land use would be very compatible with the existing. The character of the area, we've kind of touched on that already. There's extensive floodplain in the area, and the primary use is agricultural. So this rezoning would maintain the character of the area. And I didn't mention this earlier, but when I was talking about the Food Policy Council, this farm actually is an important part of the food system. The applicant referred to it as a truck farm. They grow produce, and I don't know what the acronym stands for, CSA. I know it's where you subscribe and you don't actually go to the farmer's market, but you provide produce and to subscribers. And so it's kind of like a pickup or delivery of the farm produce. So it is an important part of the local food system. The Planning Commission voted unanimously at their June meeting to forward this application to the County Commission with a recommendation for approval. And I'll be happy to answer questions if you have any, and I believe the applicant is present in person.
Thank you, Mary. Commissioners, do you have any questions? No questions here. Is the applicant here? If you'd like to provide any information, you're welcome to. You don't have to, but you can. Okay, thanks, Tom. We'll open this up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? Anyone online, Jill? Okay, we'll bring it back to the commission for comments and or motions.
I'll just comment that I appreciate that this is making the zoning make sense based on the use of the land for a long time at this point, and appreciate that now this rezoning opportunity can ensure that continued use of the land and not jeopardize it for any reason, and also just acknowledging that we have floodplain maps now, right? And there are all kinds of different examples, and this is one of them, of opportunities to sort of clean up zoning around the county to take into account floodplain maps that we have now. So if there's no other comments, I'm happy to make a motion. Well, let me make sure I get the right one, sorry. Move to approve a request to rezone Z-23-00155, approximately 33.5 acres, located at 1577 North 1550 Road, from the General Industrial and Ag 1 districts to Ag 2 Transitional Agricultural District, based on the findings presented in the staff report, and adopt resolution.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any further comment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary. All right. The last item on our regular agenda is the consideration to initiate a text amendment. Mary, are you this one as well?
Yes,
Yep,
I am.
you're our planner on this one,
Yes.
and take it away.
Okay, well, thank you. I don't have a presentation for this. I'll just give you a little background. Zoning and code staff and I met with the applicant. He had concerns, and he has concerns, that there could be additional groundwater pollution from the galvanized metal that's used for the piers. And this is not something that we looked at when we were developing the solar panel, solar farm regulations. And so the zoning regulations allow for citizens to initiate text amendments, and it seldom ever happens. I don't know that we've ever brought one before you before, but that's why this is being initiated by a citizen rather than by staff. He requested that this be brought forward. So as far as the initiation review, I've done some research. I've looked at the materials the applicant has provided, and I've looked online. I haven't done enough or dedicated enough time to it to make a decision either way, but the amount of material he's provided, I think it would warrant us to look into and determine if the regulations need to be revised or tweaked. And that would be this process. Once you initiate a text amendment, we would do the research and we would take draft language to the Planning Commission. It's also possible we could take a recommendation that there be no changes made. It all depends upon the research. We could recommend the applicant's proposed language or have alternate language. And then whatever the Planning Commission recommends would come to you. We do have one solar farm in place. It would not be retroactive if there were new standards. We may receive applications before this text amendment is done. And the fact that zinc has been brought up as a potential issue, we would just look into it while we're reviewing an application for a solar farm. So it would not hold up any applications, but we would look into that as we're working on the text amendment. And we can add conditions that aren't in the regulations. So we could add conditions to make sure zinc pollution would not be an issue. So staff is recommending that the amendment be initiated. And I believe the applicant is also present today.
Mary, quick question. I just want you to reiterate because I want to make sure I heard you right. This was not considered when the Planning Commission drafted and then brought to the County Commission the solar regs. It wasn't that it was looked at and decided not to do it. It wasn't even considered. Is that what you said?
Right, that's right. We had never considered the metal on the piers. So we were always focusing on the solar panels and the batteries. So this will give us a chance to look at the metals and the piers and see if that would be an issue.
Okay. Any other questions for Mary? The applicant is here. If you'd like to provide a statement, you're welcome to do that. Sure. Go ahead and press that button on that microphone and speak right into it. And you can move it around wherever you want. So if you want to bring it over to where your notes are, that's fine.
All right, that was loud enough, wasn't it?
Yeah.
First off, before I get started, I wanted to make a suggestion to the commissioners. Why don't you guys take some of our tax money and get cushions out there for those church pews? Those are hard. They get harder every year I come up here.
So you might want to look back about 3 weeks ago at our commission meeting. We did discuss changes to this space and you'll hear about cushions. Yeah.
Okay, good deal. I'd like to start off and say that in this text amendment, there's nothing that states in it that we want to shut down solar. This has everything to do with protecting the health and safety of the individuals that live out there with that potential water contamination. I'm sure that everybody here is old enough to remember galvanized pipes in your house, water pipes. That's against code anymore. You can't have that because of zinc and lead contamination that people were getting from those pipes. So that's kind of one aspect. There is probably 300-400 pages of information that I've given to Mary, that you guys can research. Also, these monitoring wells are going to be out there to check for lead and zinc. And I'm betting that nobody sitting in this courtroom wants to be drinking water that's contaminated with lead and zinc, no matter how minute that lead and zinc is. So, but anyway, to put in context on there was a letter that I was aware of that came out that talked about galvanized post, speed sign post, guardrails, that type of stuff. And how, they possibly don't corrode. Well, you're still going to have corrosion on anything that touches the ground, especially on these tests would show that because they test for the acidity of the soil, and anything that's in the ground is going to eventually corrode and go bad. That's anything. On the solar farm, and this is one of the things you have to remember, there's going to be, because I went over to Baldwin and looked at their solar field. And I talked to the guy over there and he told me there was about 70 piers to the acre. So if you take that times 900, if that's the size of the solar farm, you could have as many as like 70 some thousand piers in the ground. And that is what I was trying to convey, is that's going to be a high concentration. Whereas if you just had 40 or 50 piers in the ground, no problem. But with that many piers in the ground, you're going to have that potential zinc, contamination, because if the soil is acidic, and that's where, and this data that I've got here, there's a lot of it. If you take a look at it, it's going to show that sometimes that corrosion may not start for 5 or 6 years, 7 years. It could be as long as 15 years, but eventually it will start corroding. And it's the sacrificial lamb, galvanizing is. It's there to protect the steel to make it last longer, but eventually it will go by the wayside. So that's what this is all about, is trying to get monitoring wells in to monitor the groundwater and in any water table, that would be in that area and the way that it flows. So we would want those test wells in channels and how that water flows, especially maybe during the springtime when the season's the rainiest, where you're going to get the most wash coming off these fields. So lastly, over the last 24 to 48 hours that this has been out, there's been quite a bit of negativity, which kind of amazed me, because I can't understand why anybody would not want to have these monitoring wells in to test for zinc and lead in the ground. No matter how small, why would you not want to be safe? So that's kind of the last part of what I've got to say. So, any of you guys have any questions?
Yes, could you provide us your name for our minutes?
Dan Fuller,
Thanks, Dan.
that it?
I don't have any questions. Commissioner Willie?
Not
Sure.
yet.
Okay, not yet. We may have questions down the road here. Okay. This is a public agenda item. Well, they're all public agenda items, but this is a regular meeting item, so we're going to take public comment on it. Anyone here like to provide public comment on this item? Don't be shy.
Carleen Thompson. I'm part of the Kanoki Limited Partnership. Commissioners, thank you for listening to me today. I am here about this text amendment. My question is why? Has soil testing and water testing been done by the applicant prior to the proposed changes to the solar regulations, or are they looking to obtain free testing? The testing can be done by the County Extension Office for soil, and initial well water testing is already identified in the current regulations. If levels change, does the surrounding area need to keep records of the chemicals such as fertilizer and pesticide applications? Fertilizer is known to leach zinc, and plants need it to grow. If records are not kept, how do we know if it was directly from the solar farm and not from other sources? Is the solar farm responsible for everything that occurs on the surrounding property of concern? And are they responsible for all of the testing because of fear? Zinc can come from many sources. I did live between a landfill and a sewer plant. I did the testing on my water prior to the sewer plant installation and the expansion of the landfill. As a result, my husband and I installed a water filtration system as we had hard water and a lot of rust, and we personally monitored the water quality. I did not ask to mandate someone else to do it for us. My well water tests came back clean from 1981 to 2000. The tests met the standards of the Clean Water Act. Already, the solar farm must do an initial well water test on active wells in the area around the application area. What are the chemicals applied by the adjacent farms over 30 years? Would chemicals applied to an adjacent farm over 30 years not increase the level of zinc? Would they claim they did not cause this unless they are doing their own testing and record keeping? Excuse me. Where does the responsibility of testing start and continues to remain? With yourself or with someone else? Requiring a lifetime monitoring plan is a slippery slope. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Where does any contamination come from? It could be from neighboring farms. This is another request to try and burden the application processes and limit the solar farm development when it is not required in other parts of the United States. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do I fill this up?
Good evening, Jeremy LaFavor, Kansas City, Missouri. I work on behalf of a number of landowners in and around the area. And as we were discussing this, and certainly we share many concerns about, groundwater use. We were looking up all the uses of galvanized steel and want to make sure that if we're going to study the galvanized steel issues with one post or pier, that we also look at the many uses that there are, and if there is damage, then we would think that the regulation should expand beyond just solar farms, but that we need to make sure that roads and bridges and future construction take into account any dangerous poisonous effects that galvanized steel may or may not have. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
So I'm Alan Klaus Anderson. I am the chair of the energy practice at Polson LA, and I'm in our Kansas City office. I also teach renewable energy law at the University of Kansas Law School, and I'm a Douglas County resident. For this purpose, I do represent NextEra Energy, and we have reviewed the proposal for the text amendment and the requirements that go with that. The one thing I'd remind here, and a couple of things, is there's nearly 150 megawatts of installed solar capacity in the US. Most of that is utility scale solar, and most of that's ground mounted. So this is something that's been around and done for a long period of time. And of course, that includes galvanized steel. So the underlying kind of claims that would, be the purpose for necessitating this kind of extensive monitoring just don't fit with what's being requested. Staff's initial review of that shows they haven't found anything. And if you do decide to go further down that, that's what's going to be the conclusion, because this is something that has obviously been looked at for an extended period of time. It should also be remembered that a number of other agencies also look at this. KDHE and then federal would be, implicated in relation to anything that does cause contamination. So if you do decide, we look forward to working with staff to hopefully quickly and expeditiously kind of work in that process. Because I do have some flashbacks of other locations. I have flashbacks of being here when we had an attempt to create a city with a few people and no ability to do budgets. And so we get to the point where sometimes things will continually be brought up with a sliver of truth in another context to kind of continue to create delay. So I do hope we can all be, look at things with some jaundiced eyes to understand that those that aren't for the furtherance of renewable energy will continue on this. But if it does go forward in this, we look forward, as long as engineering and science are the basis for looking at this and other issues, we'll be in good shape. And so look forward to working with staff if it does go forward on this.
Any other public comment? Okay, we'll move online. Is there anyone online, Jill?
Yes, commissioners. I'm going to move Laura Beth into the panel. Laura, you can unmute and offer public comment. Laura, are you able to unmute?
There we go. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Laura Beth Clark, and I am a property owner in Douglas County. I'm calling in about the issues surrounding using galvanized steel posts in solar module racking systems and this fear that they will cause soil and groundwater contamination. Galvanized steel posts driven into the ground have commonly and widely been used in the U.S. and around the world for 75 years. You'll find them everywhere, from highway signs, guardrails, and other built structures. Farms use fence posts and barbed wire, stock tanks, outdoor farm sheds, buildings, and grain bins. For centuries, people in rural areas have collected rainwater for drinking water from galvanized roofing. Corrosive, resistant galvanized troughs and tubs have watered livestock and pets since they were invented. Water in urban areas was supplied via galvanized pipes. There is evidence that these practices contribute to healthy zinc levels in humans and animals. Zinc is one of 13 minerals required to sustain human life. Zinc is even found in red wine accumulated during the winemaking process. Zinc can also be found in milk, yogurt, and dark chocolate, and most multivitamins. The state of Kansas and this very county have national codes which freely allow the use of galvanized posts for all applications without any known requirement or restrictions related to concerns about potential groundwater contamination. It is a common practice for any ground mount solar facility to complete comprehensive site geotechnical investigations during project development. Geotechnical testing of the soil with corrosive testing is always completed, with these results being used to inform the developer and project engineers about the galvanization thickness needed. Zinc naturally occurs around the earth and the earth's crust and is not a contaminant at low levels, and utility scale solar facilities have been around since the 80s, and there are currently more than 1,100 utility scale solar facilities in operation. I repeat, soil and groundwater contamination from galvanized steel posts that are used in solar power plants have not been reported as an issue. It's disturbing that solar opponents work tirelessly to magnify any minor impact that they can think of that could come from a solar facility, even making up false impacts, while totally ignoring the ongoing real and significant environmental impacts that the coal-fired power plants continue to operate. The need for more electricity at a valued rate is important, especially during our changing weather extremes we have been experiencing. The greater need for air conditioning, as well as heating our homes and businesses, hospitals, manufacturing areas, and other infrastructure needs of our society. Please dismiss this petition on it doesn't have merit or evidence to be of concern. Will all construction using galvanized steel have this standard placed on them? Thank you very much for your time and for what you do for the county.
Any other public comment, Jill?
Not seeing any.
Close public comment on this item, bring it back up for commissioner discussion, and if there's any additional questions.
I just have one additional question for Mary. Can you just reiterate what you said earlier about the potential options? So I believe that I heard staff is recommending initiating the text amendment, which will then allow staff opportunity to research further and then make recommendations. And there's a few different options of recommendations. Is that correct?
That's right. Just with the initiation, once we do the research and consult with the experts, we would be providing a recommendation, and it could be to adopt what the applicant is proposing. We could recommend adopting different draft language, or we could recommend not making any changes. So it just starts the ball rolling and allows us to start looking into the issue, but we won't know until we've done the research just what the recommendation would be.
Thank you.
Mary, can you pull up the language, and I'll talk a little bit and give you some time from the current solar regs that talk about well water testing and soil testing. So I did serve on both the ad hoc and the planning commission when these solar regs were being developed, with a significant amount of time, both reading, learning, listening, reading anything that the community brought forward to us. And I would say that groundwater was something that we talked about extensively, and what we put into place, which Mary can come up with the exact language. So we'll be on record with that. But was that any landowner with an active well could petition to have that. Actually, I believe that it was actually on a requirement of the energy company that they would reach out to landowners and offer to have free well water testing done prior to the project. And also that the soil testing was intended to look for any trace elements that the zoning and codes office decided that they should look for. So we left that kind of broadly available to zoning and codes to look through the EPA data sheets on any product that was going in that installation, and to determine what elements were considered to be even potential problem and make sure that those were tested for. So it's not just soil health, though I have a deep interest in that, but there was also the testing requirement for those other elements. I feel like that may be a better protection than what's being proposed, because the idea was that rather than wait, and if there is any kind of a problem, that rather than wait till that shows up in well water, that we're getting that in that soil testing, because that would be a much faster turnaround time before it would be an impact to anyone. We didn't anticipate that there would be contaminations from any of those installations, but we put in place a process for finding out. So I'm hoping that Mary can kind of walk us through what that is and see what the commissioners think.
Yeah, thank you. I have the ordinance here for that, the solar regulations. And it does state, as you mentioned, that groundwater, it says with each approved conditional use permit application, an optional water analysis of active wells within 1/4 mile of the site area shall be offered by the operator prior to installation of the equipment. And this offer is made to all owners within 1/4 mile of the site area by certified mail at least 1 month prior to installation. And then they provide a copy of the certified letter and a list of the owners notified, as well as all the owners who asked that their water be tested. And it notes that test shall analyze the water for substances such as lead and cadmium as determined with the conditional use permit. So with each conditional use permit, depending upon what materials are being used, we could ask for different substances to be tested for, and shall include a pesticide panel. And so that's the water testing. And the soil testing also is going to look for heavy metals. And those are to be done prior to construction. And it's going to be done prior to reclamation and then post reclamation. And so it's not an ongoing testing. We don't have soil tests or water tests just every so often. And I think that's what the applicant is asking for, is more of an ongoing testing. The water testing we do now, it would be a baseline. So if a property owner went out and tested their water and found there were elements in it, then they would have this to make a claim that there has been damage. So there would be probably some differences, if draft language was adopted, if ongoing monitoring was seen to be necessary.
Mary, can you pull up that language? Because I thought it was every 5 years was the repeat for the soil testing.
I am having trouble finding that, and I don't know if it's just, let's give me 1 minute.
But again, I think our intention with the regulations that then came to the commission before I was on it here was that we didn't have to anticipate with the regulations, every element that we'd need to test for, that would be determined with recommendation of staff and the consent of the commission.
Okay, yeah, I did find the soil sampling plan. And so the soil is to document the soil health, because that was an important component, and also to identify any heavy metals. And we do it before construction begins, when construction is complete, prior to renewing a CUP, prior to beginning decommissioning and reclamation, and following decommissioning and reclamation of the site. So I think maybe we discussed doing it at intervals, but the final language doesn't have the intervals. It's those periods.
Mary, this is Commissioner Kelly, there's been brought up a question about delays. And we have applications that come in all the time on either side of a text amendment. Does this stop any application from moving forward if we've initiated a text amendment?
No, it doesn't. If it gets to the point that Planning Commission has approved a text amendment and has approved draft language, we'd probably just incorporate that. But if an application was submitted tomorrow, if you initiated this text amendment and an application was submitted tomorrow, we would move forward. The fact that zinc has been brought up as an issue, we would look into it and review that and make any conditions. We can add conditions to a conditional use permit. So there could be, we could even have a condition that depending that would require some sort of groundwater testing if it looked like it was necessary. I don't think we could have a condition that tied it to the text amendment results, just because that's too unknown, and that wouldn't really be fair to have an unknown condition. That we would look into it, just as if any property owner brought up another concern that we hadn't considered, we would look at that when we're looking to the conditional use permit application as well. So despite, along with the conditions which are required by the regulations, we can add other conditions. So we'll probably start the review and the research with the text amendment, but it would certainly accelerate it if we had an application, so we could be sure that we weren't missing something.
Thank
But it
you.
would not delay. Yeah.
So commissioners, I take very seriously that staff has recommended the review of this text amendment. I understand the concerns about delays, but I believe that that's been addressed in Mary's answer to my question. That staff would like to look into it and is recommending this, has me leaning towards approving the initiation of the text amendment.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Reed, I feel similarly, and so I wanted to verify and reiterate kind of what the options are, and would like to follow staff's current recommendation and see what their future further researched recommendation is, and continue the conversation at that point about more particularities of that, because I think there's study to be done to understand more about, for us as a commission to have further conversation, and any concerns, as you said, Commissioner Kelly, that there are about potential delays created. I don't have those concerns. And I also just really appreciate and want to affirm that this is what civic engagement looks like. And this is what a community member who has been following an issue that is significant to our community, and to them as a property owner and to their neighborhood in particular, who has looked into processes available to them and avenues to initiate some further dialogue and research about something that concerns them. And for me, I think that that's just worth affirming. And so I appreciate that, Mr. Fuller, and think that I really appreciate that staff have already been in some communication and are willing to dive in a little bit deeper and acknowledge that that wasn't a particular part of the conversation in the initial development of the solar regulations. There were a lot of parts of that conversation, as Commissioner Willie was a part of and has alluded to. This is one more thing. We'll see whether or not the research rises. My perception is that, you know, whether or not the research rises to the level of recommending a text amendment, we'll see, but I'm interested to see that. And think that there's no harm in moving forward as is. Yeah, so that's where I stand on this.
So I think the only harm in moving forward with it is the amount of staff time into it. I think we will be asking some similar questions anyway, so that may end up being a wash, except for the public process part of it for an additional pass through the planning commission in here. I do believe that the conditional use permit process gives us full leverage to condition and ask questions and bring community concerns forward in any application. So I don't see it as a necessity. I don't see it as an add. I think we have that power to dig in and assess this and then apply that knowledge to any conditional use permit that comes forward should we choose to. And also that the program that we have in place for water testing and soil testing gets to the heart of what's being looked at here. It could certainly be added to or tweaked, but that could happen with or without the text amendment.
I'm going to make a motion to initiate a text amendment TA 23-00240 to the zoning and land use regulations for the unincorporated territory of Douglas County, Kansas, to include additional standards to prevent or remediate groundwater pollution resulting from the materials of the supporting piers.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I intend to vote against it, but only because I believe we have this power already, and I don't want to take additional staff time running through the motions when we already have what we need.
Yeah, I just say that I shared that concern initially, but when staff was making the recommendation, I backed off that concern because it sounds like something they'd like to investigate further. But I see your point, Commissioner Willie. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Nay.
Passes 2-1. That concludes our regular agenda items. I do just want to echo Commissioner Willie's comments about public civic engagement, Mr. Fuller. I do appreciate you bringing it forward. This is very rare that we get text amendments from the public. It usually is initiated in other places. So thanks for doing that. It's pretty cool. Commissioners, I don't think we have any appointments unless I'm mistaken. So we'll move on to Commissioner Administrator Miscellaneous, and we'll turn that over to Jill.
Commissioners, I just wanted to mention you have the Administrator's Weekly Memo, which Jake's been putting together the last few weeks. I think the big thing I wanted to make sure we highlighted was at the top, you see the election canvas is scheduled for 9 a.m. this coming Monday. We've got a drug court graduation coming up, which are always amazing experiences. You get to attend those. Schools Foundation is having the breakfast at the end of September. The remaining judges quarterly meeting is going to be on October 4th. And then you've already got a placeholder for the general election canvas, which is going to take place on November 20th. There's just really great report that's included in there as well for information on the Natural and Cultural Grant Program, kind of a historical perspective of that Caitlin Amerlin put together that I wanted to make sure you guys got a chance to look at when you have time. There's some other information there for your review, and we're here for any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Questions or other comments, commissioners, before we adjourn? I'll just share a meeting that I'm pretty excited about that happened last week with Justice Matters, the Heartland Workforce, which I serve on that board. I know Commissioner Reed has served on that board as well, and an organization out of Baltimore called the Dwyer Foundation. And they provide support for those who want to work and get training in senior care. So we're thinking CNAs, home health aides, things like that. It's a really interesting model that they have, and we're still exploring it, but you all are very familiar with the challenges we have in Douglas County and the low pay we have for those jobs and how hard it is to recruit people for those jobs. And so it was very interesting to hear what's going on in some other states and Dwyer's initial interest in possibly coming to Northeast Kansas because of the way that we're organized as a multi-county area. That's very interesting to them. We're continuing to have discussions, and I think the workforce board will be looking at inviting two groups together. One would be a group of employers to see what supports we could provide, and one would be a group of training partners. Dwyer seems very open to coming to our space. They would actually hire someone here in Douglas County to do case management, but they're very open to a couple of different ideas. We just have to explore them deeper. So that's pretty exciting. I think sometimes the public doesn't know these meetings that we all have that are sort of pulling on threads, trying to see what's possible. And that's one I'm pretty excited about. So I wanted to share that with the public and other commissioners.
I see it's not on our schedule yet, but I think we have a work session coming up maybe this fall about some of our senior issues. So I'll be excited to hear more about that.
Yeah.
That is a very cool update. Thank you. And it gave me time to remember that I should give you all a brief update about our CJCC meeting, which happened yesterday. And we had an update on our law enforcement contact study and sort of the continuation of local data collection and assessment between Dr. Matt Cravens and all of our law enforcement partners. So that was a good update to receive. And then got to briefly meet Jessica Glendinning, who is our new Chief Public Defender in the BIDS office, the Board of Indigent Defense Services office that is opening in the 7th Judicial District. Is beginning training in this next month, and will begin accepting cases in October, appointments from the district court. And so they're organizing their staff now. Will be in the location, everybody just calls it the old church building across the street from here. I believe it's 1040 New Hampshire. So right across from the law enforcement and judicial building, which is a really great location, and just really excited to have that institutional defense for felony levels, along with Kansas Holistic Defenders being institutional defense for misdemeanor levels. So that's exciting progress. And then also Katie Fitzgerald shared with us that Douglas County had been selected by the Jill, I'm going to look to you. Is it Justice Management Inc? Okay, the Justice Management Institute, to basically get some technical assistance from them and around perhaps some restructuring and basically how to really enhance the function of our CJCC. And so I believe that we will be the first CJCC in Kansas to join that national network. There's sort of the forefront of really organizing bylaws and governance and structure and functionality of CJCCs. So I'm excited to get their expertise, and really appreciate that Katie sought out that opportunity and made sure that Douglas County got to absorb some of that. And I believe, if I remember right, she said that it had been several years since any communities had been selected. So it's a pretty big deal to be sort of on the cusp of that. And I'm hopeful about what we'll learn from them.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Reed. Appreciate that update. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned.